Hello, hello, hello. Let's get some comments on here. Oh man, so many things. MK2 Gamer, I imagine that's Mortal Kombat 2 Gamer. He seems to be on London time and is at 2 a.m. and is saying he's probably going to get fired coming in late. Um, the So many things to talk about, but also like nothing like particular and like big besides well, I mean, we can talk about like Ukraine and the midterms and things like that. Those that was sort of big, but nothing too huge with Ice and Fire um since we last spoke. The Have I watched Succession? I watched the first season. I haven't seen anything since. Um, uh, I really like the cousin character. He's like the best part. I just kind of want to get back to him constantly. Um, 700 Duolingo streak. Let's go. My Duolingo streak is currently at 280. So 700 is impressive. 700 is impressive. Um, but man, let's see what else we got. First time in a while I've been on a stream. Welcome, welcome. Um, After Senate victory, the Dems have a real chance to hold the House. I have a bunch of conservative friends, and this is the exact opposite of what they thought was going to happen. Uh, yeah, I know everybody likes to jump into Ice and Fire first, but I guess we can talk about the midterms a little bit. Um, the So obviously I was very doomer like before the midterms, and I've been saying this for a long time about the state of my country, and that it kind of doesn't matter. Like Trump is a symptom of a problem. And I was very upset about the problem being misinformation and people not really caring about democracy that much and getting easily distracted by little things. And I sort of said, well, even if Biden wins, like it doesn't matter in 4 years. Like DeSantis or somebody is going to win, and then it's going to be even worse, and it's just going to continue to go downhill. Um, the midterms, it didn't completely remove this feeling I have about America, but what the midterms did for me is sort of make me realize that no, voters, they actually care about issues, and the media likes to have these big narratives, and they think that if they can put the narrative out there, that it'll somehow really affect reality, that if they write something, then it'll be. And so for literally more than a month they wrote this narrative about a red wave, and there was no evidence of a red wave. You had all of these like far right polling firms showing like a red wave. And when it really came down to it, is that people are really angry about abortion getting banned in America, and they didn't like all of these candidates who were denying the election last cycle. And it didn't matter that the media was saying, "Oh, red wave, red wave, red wave," and the Democrats ended up, or these little things, like they try to political science it and say like, well, historically, the midterms after a presidential election always shows losses, as if like humanity can be predicted in these like the waves of an ocean or something, coming up on a beach, as if we don't actually have like feelings and real beliefs and things like that. And I guess what it showed me is that no, human beings, like maybe they do things too late, and maybe they wait for crisis before acting, but they are prone to actually like try they will try to save things like right at the end. um and so it made me feel a little better about the state of humanity, that that humanity could actually like block out the media narrative and just vote how they wanted to vote, and it came out, which is kind of what everybody thought this was going to be the result months ago. It was just that the media likes to have this horse race, like attitude in order to sell newspapers or to generate clicks, and that just didn't happen. Like people really did vote for issues, and they elected some good people, and it looks like the Democrats have a really good chance at actually holding the House. So it's sort of like, a doctor tells you have 6 months to live, and then you go up for a checkup, and they're like, actually, the tumor isn't growing as fast as you thought. You've got 5 years to live. Oh, well, it makes me feel a little better. It doesn't make me feel like fully relieved, but it's nice that America occasionally does something right, because man, it's just all the time they don't. My TL is filled with right-wing cope. Love it. Yeah. So there's these funny things as well. So the one thing that these narratives do is they affect the way politicians kind of act the next cycle. I keep thinking back to 2016, and it was such a close election between Hillary and Trump. And had things go, it had a 30,000 votes in various states gone a different way, the narrative would have been, this was the country's rejection of Trump-like racism, and Republicans won't do this again. But even though Trump like massively lost the popular vote, and this wasn't actually the feeling of America, all the politicians got this idea that no, acting like Trump is going to cause me to win. And so we get these like Matt Gaetz and Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert kind of characters coming out of the woodwork. And then 2 years later, they get fucking killed in an election, and they still don't learn their lessons. And then Trump loses, and they still don't learn their lesson. And then finally, after this election, people are like, maybe we shouldn't be acting like Trump. Maybe it's not a winning strategy, considering that like it didn't win the popular vote in 2016. It lost us seats in 2018. It lost us the presidency in 2020, and it failed to have us win anything in 2022. Like, it takes a while, but I think eventually, the Republicans are going to start saying like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be acting like Trump. This is my hope. But the thing is like, everybody's like, oh, next election, maybe there'll be a wave. And they really think that like the average voter is fickle, but abortion's not going away until abortion is secure as a right for women in America, all of America. They're not going to win elections. It's going to be Democrats doing well forever until the law is reversed and goes back to the way it is. And they can act however they want. They can like try to tell people like, oh, inflation. And it's like the average voter doesn't think inflation, like the president controls inflation. Like, these are silly ideas. Like how is the average Joe like sitting there going, yes, the price of eggs is up, I'm going to vote against Joe Biden. Like the average, it's like, how stupid does the average person have to be? Maybe some people fall for that, but it's really about abortion. Wear a cloak merchandise when? I'll look into it. I think wear a cloak is pretty funny, though. I don't know if I could get like, unless you actually show like Matt Smith's face, like would people really get it? Like, wear a cloak, like do my. First time I see your face, Preston, for Luigi. Oh, I've been doing the live streams now for at least a year, but yeah, but I don't know. My face has been here and there over the past few years. But if you wanted to look out for it, some people are very secretive, and I understand it. But on not showing face, but it's just it's more entertaining to watch somebody with an actual face out there talking and connect with people than it is to just listen to voices. Language is incredibly visual, and we don't kind of realize how visual language is. And how communication is just so much clearer when you have two face-to-face people versus on the telephone or in a fucking email. Yeah, the polls made it hard to become a doomer. Yeah, but again, it was these like right-wing polls. Like, so one of my favorite so a lot of people get their news in different ways, right? So a lot of you probably, if you're young and savvy, you use Twitter and have your favorite reporters that you follow, and then it's just all kind of contained. And I understand that's how most people get their news these days. Believe it or not, I get my news mainly from the Daily Kos. And I know some people out there are going to be like, "Oh, Daily Kos, like it's very aligned with like my form of liberalism. Like it's not left-wing socialist. It's very like aligned with the Democratic Party, which I am fairly aligned with the Democratic Party. My beliefs and views, like a lot of people kind of say, oh, the Democrats, like they don't represent my left-wing views. The Democrats absolutely represent my left-wing views. Like they are right up my alley of what I believe. So I really like the Democratic Party, and Daily Kos is very aligned with the Democratic Party, but they also have very good insight on stuff. And for months, like all through these like polls, they were kind of saying, no, the polls are bull. Like, look at these numbers. These polls are bull. Also, the Daily Kos has the best Ukraine coverage that exists out there. It's incredible. And I don't even understand how the system works, because I know that like there's various users that just post like stories and stuff, and then various contributors. But it's I like the site a lot. And they were actually saying months in that it was all kind of bull, and the red wave was bull, and their Ukraine coverage is insanely good. There's no better place to get your Ukraine news on like where the movements are going and who's being attacked and it's that's where I get my news. But I know it's some people will be like, what, that's some fringe site. I'm like, no, it's not really. And what I like is that they're political and policy oriented, and some of the contributors are very smart, and it's a good site. I'm surprised that it functions and works. Like I'm surprised it hasn't been destroyed by trolls or something. I don't fully understand how they make their site work. Ron versus Don is going to be such a wild ride in 2024. So this is what the American system is talking about right now. That Ron DeSantis, because he won in crazy Florida, and there's nobody else kind of in the Republican Party that seems like suitable or liked, that he's going to run, and Donald Trump is going to be upset, and he is going to try to trash DeSantis, and then there's going to be some sort of civil war within the party. And yeah, I would love that, but that's some wishful thinking. It's wishful thinking. And I think it's wishful thinking because Republicans don't really care. Like, they don't really care who they follow. No one is bad enough for a Republican. They'll always eventually, like, if the nominee is a shit sandwich, like, they will vote for that shit sandwich. You have to go to some super extremes before they start bailing on people. Like that guy in Alabama who they like outed for like dating 14-year-olds and stuff and being a weirdo. Like, if you get to that extreme and that's all you got, like, okay, maybe they'll start abandoning people. But look, like, Herschel Walker still almost won, and that guy is like just brain dead horrible. Like claimed he killed people. Like telling his girlfriends to get abortions for a right winger. Like, and they still came out in droves and were like, fuck it, we're gonna elect this guy. Trump himself, like, come on, like the guy has sex with a porn star when his like newborn is home with his wife, and everybody's like, nah, I'm voting for him. So um and that's the thing. Trump's charismatic leaders are the only ones that have a shot. Um, but I DeSantis doesn't. I mean, he doesn't have Trump's charisma, but he's he's not horrible, right? He's still able to be governor of a state. He's not, he's not ugly. He's not. He's he's just I fear him. I fear every Republican. So we'll see how it goes. But um, Preston, what are your thoughts on the relationship between House Wayne and House Waynwood? Let me look up House Wayne for a second. Um, Okay, so this is what we're looking at here. Let me see if I can bring this up for people so that it's not. So there is a minor house in the Riverlands called House Wayne, and they also have a wheel. House Waynwood is of course the wheel with broken spokes. Um, but House Wayne, Christopher Wayne participated in the Battle of the Green Fork during the Faith Militant Uprising. Visenya used Vagar to set the seat of House Wayne to set in a single night the seats of House Wayne. Blaintree, Deddings, Leicester, Terrick. Euphrates Wayne as the steward of Riverrun in Clash of Kings. And Christopher Wayne fought against that front. So they're pretty minor. They're just kind of there. I don't know if other than the fact that a curiosity, there's a scene in which Jamie brings along a guy with the last name Hogg, and he starts and he's interested in somebody else with a pig sigil in the Riverlands or something, and it's a little curiosity. He starts talking about lineage and stuff like that. So we get into these little talks like that. So some people, I think way back in the day, Bron Vras was talking about, wrote about how he thought that the Risewells up in the north, because they had a horse, would have a relationship with the Blackwoods, or the Brackens. I'm sorry, both being horse sigils and things like this. And yeah, I suppose that could certainly be the case. Is it a large enough house that George R. Martin even put very much thought into it? The sigil itself kind of comes from, they say, what is it? This a lot of times when you look up sigils on the Ice and Fire wiki, they'll talk about according to semi-canon sources, and things like that, and where this sigil came from. And a lot of that comes from, I think there was a RPG years ago that went to George R. Martin and was like, let's get some sigils done, and then they were kind of a bunch of them were kind of hastily done for this RPG. And so I don't know how much thought was really put into a lot of these sigils that exist out there. But it's certainly an interesting idea that they're related, and if I certainly think that there's so much foreshadowing of the Vale going into the Riverlands that it might come up that the Waynwoods and the Waynes are somehow bound in a Karstark kind of way. But I think it's just one of those little things that maybe George threw in. Garden didn't think about it too much, but we'll see. We'll see. Um, Preston, you should check out Sunset Roller Coaster. Great Taiwanese band. Okay. Sunset Roller Coaster. Five-piece jazz-influenced synth-pop band from Taipei, Taiwan. Interesting. All right, I'll check it out. I'll check it out. The the Taiwanese, I mean, they certainly have their artists, but they're for the most part pop artists. Like uh, Chinese pop is like, it's very like soft and like, whoa, I need na, na, na. It's nothing like, it's very hard to find anything kind of interesting and rocking. I mean, it exists, but it's not huge. Regarding the fanfic, it's not a physical book. Are you tempted to just do as many chapters required to tell a story, not 5 per character as you plan to? We'll see when that comes. I mean, I think for the most part, like my so the big thing about like the big problem that George R. R. Martin kind of has with the Winds of Winter going forward is that he says that um uh he says that it's going to be the largest book that he's ever written. And the problem is that there's like binding limits when it comes to like official publishing, or else you have to like split the book into 2 volumes and stuff like that. And so they like to like cut stuff. So Winds of Winter had a dozen chapters that were essentially cut because for length. And so electronically this isn't an issue. You can make a book as long as you want. But in my it with the fanfic Winds of Winter, it's more, this is a lot of work and it's taking a long time. And when you say like, oh, it can be as long as you guys want, that's true, but like that means like an additional year, or an additional 2 years for the story to be done, and just in that sense, I wouldn't want it to go longer than it needs to. So it's only in a sense that like I don't want it like already we're looking at like 5 years to finish the thing, right? And that's being very, very like generous, So to say like, oh, you can make it as long as you want, that's true, we can, but that's an additional year, an additional 2 years to do things if we feel like the story really needs to be wrapped up. I don't think I necessarily like have the same problems as George R. R. Martin does with like growing story. Like I'm very fine with like shrinking story and focusing on the shrink. And that's kind of how I've been like going forward with the chapters, trying to shrink the story, trying not to grow the story, which is like something George R. R. Martin has not yet done, so, if we get to that point, like we're 4 or 5 years in and we're like, nah, this book needs to be a little longer. Yeah, it'll be longer. Like, we want it to be good. We just want it to be good. And, I don't think it'll be a problem. Like, I don't think it'll be a problem just because like we're very focused on shrinking the story. George R. R. Martin has a problem because he can't do that. He can't do that. And actually, even when you read his other work, and I'm talking like Dying of the Light, Armageddon Rag, Fever Dream. If you read those books, they grow, and then there's like a collapse point where their ending is very, very fast and very, very abrupt. And that's kind of his writing style. But when you're talking like 7 books or whatever coming and then doing this huge collapse, I think it'd be a little more abrupt to do that sort of thing, to have everything kind of collapse so quickly. Like at least with like Fever Dream, Armageddon Dragon, and Dying of the Light, those are smaller self-contained stories. So when you have 2 dozen characters and half of them die off, and then you have like a coda of like what happens to everybody else, like that's not so bad. But if you had a story where we have 2,000 characters and then 1,000 die off, and then you have to write what happens to 1,000 characters, like that just also doesn't work. Like he's never done anything like this. So I'm focusing on shrinking. Um, Thought you'd get your news from some more news. They're more critical of Biden than I like. Like I don't understand like why. Like I think Cody Johnston is hilarious. I've been a fan of Cody Johnston since his Cracked days. He was one of the funniest guys on there. He's a really really funny guy. And some more news can be really really funny, but then it's just like they spend so much time trashing Biden for sometimes just nothing. Like I'm just like, what's the point, dude? Like what's the point of trashing Uncle Joe? We're not getting anywhere without Uncle Joe. Does the velocity of money have an effect on inflation, be it imagined or real? Yes, if anything is imagined, it's going to affect inflation. So if like you think like most studies now kind of think that this is a big shift to economics all of a sudden. But for those that don't pay attention to economics too much, the classic theory is that inflation is mainly controlled by your supply of money. And that if you're doing something like if the government is spending a bunch, or cutting taxes and putting more money out there and creating more money supply, then obviously the value of the dollar would go down because there's more of it out there. Like anything else, like if there are 1,000 boxes of Cheerios in the world, they're going to be a certain value. If there's 10,000 boxes of Cheerios, they're going to diminish in value because of a scarcity kind of situation. So like understanding inflation in that sense, in a basic sense, is not really very difficult. The more money out there, the less your dollar is worth. Scarcity, it's the same as diamonds or anything else. But then what they found is that over the past 40 years, inflation hasn't worked that way. That there's just been lots of spending constantly, and for the most part, the dollar's value hasn't like changed very much. And there's a lot of mysteries on why this is, but kind of recently, as in the past 15 years, with the rise of the behavioral economists becoming king, at least in academia, the behavioral economists have not yet become king in governments, because governments are usually about 30 years behind with regards to the hip things, with maybe not 30, but like 20, 25 years behind with regards to what's hip in economics. So I think they have found that, like, yes, when people believe there's inflation, there's going to be inflation and stuff like that. So, I mean, velocity of money, which is this kind of mushy idea that people talk about how like the measurement of the rate of money being exchanged in the economy, like how fast everyone is going out and buying and stuff like that. It's a very difficult thing to measure or actually quantify, but people talk about it a bit. I imagine if everyone is going out and spending really fast, that I guess that would create. I mean, I feel like if they're spending more, then there's more money and more commerce happening. Then that would seem like it would create more money in the money supply. Because if there's more business, more people are taking out loans. That's the other thing, is money can be created not just by the government. Money is created by banks as well when they put out loans and things like that. So if more business, more loans, more development, more borrowing, I think it would have a natural inflationary effect. And if everybody's imagining that the economy is overheating, then I imagine that they would also think inflation is happening. But I think for the most part, we can kind of blame the most recent incident of inflation on COVID and supply chains getting screwed up and things like that. But yeah, I think that's it. But there's real aspects to inflation. There's imagined aspects to inflation. But I think among economists, the imagined ones are the ones that really kind of are interesting. Recently, I've been rereading the main series, and in Sansa 6, Game of Thrones, Pycelle molesting Sansa. Her dream after drinking his concoction is disturbing. I have heard this I've heard of before. Now we know that Pycelle definitely examines Sansa, and at some point. I'm trying to remember if there's a drinking. Oh, here we go. The serving girls tried to talk to her when they brought her meals, but she never answered them. Once Grand Maester Pycelle came with a box of flasks and bottles to ask if she was ill. He felt her brow, made her undress, and touched her all over, while her bedmaids held her down. This is when he examined. He essentially checked her maidenhead at this point. When he left, he gave her a potion of honey water and herbs and told her to drink a swallow every night. She drank it all right then and went back to sleep. She dreamt of footsteps on the tower stair and ominous scraping of leather on stone as a man climbed towards her bedchamber, step by step. All she could do was huddle behind the door and listen, trembling, as he came closer and closer. It was Sir Ilan Payne, she knew, coming to her with ice in hand, coming to take her head. But there was no place to run. So I think in this situation, we're supposed to think it's creepy that Pycelle does this physical examination of her against her will. Yes. And I think because it's creepy there, and then we go to her passing out and getting drugged, and we have Bill Cosby on the mind, that we automatically go to, molestation. But I think probably George R. R. Martin was just looking for an opportunity to have a dream sequence in there, and that he didn't intend for that to happen. He definitely intended the initial creepiness. But I don't know if, the other women are in the room. So I don't know. He would have to order the other women to leave. And I don't know if that would be kind of weird. So I don't know if we really have any proof that he was molesting her during that situation. Though, let's see. It says that was when she realized she was naked. She crouched down, trying to cover herself with her hands as her door began to swing open, creeping, the point of the great sword poking through. We're definitely supposed to be thinking about... What's the next paragraph? The king has gone hunting. Wait, no. She awoke murmuring, "Please, please, I'll be good. I'll be good. Please don't." But there was nowhere to hear. Now you're making me think that she definitely is having a dream where she's thinking about getting raped by a sword. That's definitely and swords are dicks and dicks are swords. That's definitely the case. But is Pycelle actually having sex with her at that moment? I think the bed maids were still there. I guess it's something we're supposed to think about, but I don't know if Pycelle actually does that, because Pycelle would get in trouble if she had if logically speaking, if Sansa um if her if she has her hymen broken, she really loses value for House Lannister. And so I don't know. And Pycelle, above all, is a Lannister crony and wants the best for House Lannister. So I think, logically speaking, Pycelle just wouldn't do that. I understand that we're supposed to be creeped out and thinking about that. I mean, she's getting touched all over by Pycelle when she's naked. She has a dream about being naked and a sword penetrating her. We're supposed to think about that. That's absolutely the case. But I think, logically speaking, it just wouldn't make sense for for Pycelle to do that. But I think we're definitely supposed to think about it now. Think about that now that you mention it. Preston, have you ever done cocaine? I think you would like it. It increases your productivity tenfold. Um, I never really had the opportunity. There was one time in college where some people were doing cocaine around me, and I didn't do it. And after that, I just don't I don't see cocaine around. Um, Not my friend groups or my peer groups or things like that. Once I joined government, like there, you can't do any drugs and keep a security clearance. So yeah, I haven't done any drugs since I haven't even smoked weed since I was like 23 years old or something. So like it's been a long time, and it's nothing to do with the fact that I think there's anything morally wrong with recreational drug use. Um, it's just like I got a security clearance, and I can't do that anymore. But I never did anything more than smoking weed. Um, and so but no, I've never tried cocaine. But productivity tenfold. I imagine when I was in college, there was this one guy who put off writing his like senior thesis until like the last few days or something, and then he took a bunch of speed and like wrote the entire thing in a weekend. Like this 80-page thing. It was insane. Like everybody was really worried about him. They're like, oh my god, he's just been like shut into his room. Kind of crazy. um Oh, if the children of the forest have a time traveling brand, do you think the others have a time traveler of their own? This is very Quantum Leap, uh, Evil Leaper from the future kind of thing. And the uh, the problem with any story that has two time travelers is that once one time traveler would time travel, the other time traveler would be like erased or disappear. So you can't really have that kind of thing going on. I understand that there's things like Star Trek, the temporal Cold War, and stuff like that, where multiple time travelers are going around changing things, but you logically can't do it. Like, once one time traveler affects the timeline, the other time traveler is gone. Like, they're done. Like, if they've done something to win, you can't go back. This is why, I mean, Back to the Future 2 doesn't make sense. Like, once Biff goes back and changes the timeline, they shouldn't be there anymore, right? To go back and fix it. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So as much as I love shows like Voyagers, like there was this show when I was a kid called Voyagers where they had this compass. It was this guy and this little boy, and they had this compass, and they would open up the compass, and like it would tell them if there was something wrong with time, and they had to like go and correct the timeline. For some reason, the timeline would like naturally just get out of whack, and they would have to like fix it. Um, and then the show got canceled because they had one of those on set like gun mishaps, and he ended up he like put a gun to his head, thinking it was empty, and he blew his head off. It was like Brandon Lee kind of situation. It was really really horrible, but It was good. It was a good little show. It was one of those shows that ended with like, if you want to learn more about the Roman Empire, check out your local library. Fucking great. But so I don't think that there's a second time traveler in the story. I think there's one time traveler, and it's Bran, and he's trying to fix everything Groundhog's Day style over and over and over again, to try to save humanity and everything. Um, uh, Thoughts on Jon and Dany getting together theory? I think it's I think I think it's pretty established that that would then George's like I don't say George's original plan, because George's original plan was for um Jon and Arya to get together, but I think it makes sense. I think how the show showed it makes sense. Like from the beginning, I knew that R plus L equals J was a flawed idea, not in the sense that like Rhaegar and Lyanna couldn't produce Jon, but everything that like people attached to that, every train that people attached to that, that it meant like Jon was the chosen one and he was going to be the true king, and he was going to unite the realm because of Rhaegar being his dad and Lyanna being his mom, and that he was going to bring everybody together. The show showed that no, R plus L equals J doesn't save the world. It causes the world to fall apart. Like it's and it, even though they didn't do it too well, because in the end R plus L equals J led to one person dying, and that was Varys. That was the only thing that happened because of R plus L equals J. All of that setup was for Varys to die. But nonetheless, in the book, it seems like it would be more of something to drive a wedge between humanity and cause it to fight. So I think that it works in that sense, that R plus L equals J is cursed. Like, it's actually bad that Jon would be the son of Rhaegar, because it creates more tension between him and Dany, and a fight, rather than, if he were a bastard, everything would have been great, But so I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense as like what George is doing going forward. I think the show probably showed more or less what George was planning at that time. What video games do you play, and what video games made you realize you can't play video games? I played my favorite video games growing up were the Ultima series. I loved Ultima. I loved the lore. I loved the philosophy of it. I loved exploring around. I loved those adventure games. I played Eye of the Beholder. I played, Might and Magic. I played all sorts of like weird computer games. Unlike Nintendo and stuff, obviously I played like Mario and Zelda and stuff like that. But I think I realized like I really couldn't play games when I think I was playing Dead Reckoning, and I was like, oh, I need to win this video game in every single way and unlock every achievement. And I was just playing like Dead Reckoning until like 5 a.m. Or maybe I was also doing it with Civ 3, and I was like, nah, I can't play video games. It's horrible. Bad enough. Like Pokemon Go is bad enough. Have you seen the TV show Succession? I like it better than Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. I think you'd super relate to the character Greg a lot. I've seen first season, and Greg is my favorite character. At least in first season. I think he was really like the most interesting character in it. I actually thought that the daddy son stuff from first season just went on too long. It's like, yes, it's Don Jr. and he feels sad, and he's having his conflict with his dad. I thought that eventually gets boring. Like I hope, like, I haven't watched season 2, or maybe I saw the first few episodes of season 2, but I haven't gone on. But I really got quite bored with the father son dynamic, and I think like Macaulay Culkin's brother is more entertaining, and Greg is more entertaining, and stuff like that. Um, and so I hope going forward you get more of those characters, and it gets more interesting than just like the same like daddy son, um, Don Jr., Donald Trump thing of the first season. But I liked it. I liked Succession, but I haven't had the time to binge and catch up on it. But everybody says it's really really good. So I mean, I thought first season was okay. I didn't think it was anything like it got a little predictable. Like, okay, things are looking well. When's everything gonna fall apart? But we'll see. Maybe see if people let me know if seasons 2 and 3 are better or something. If George R. R. Martin could only publish one more book, and you have to choose, Winds of Winter of Fire and Blood, Volume 2, Avalon, or a new standalone novel. Ooh. I think I'd rather see Winds. I'm more invested in Winds. I mean, I think all those other things would be very well. I don't think Fire and Blood Volume 2 would be that interesting. There'd be like you'd get it. You'd jump forward to the stuff on Summerhall, and that would be really, really interesting to read about Summerhall. But I mean, for the most part, like how emotionally invested are you really in the fourth Blackfire Rebellion? I mean, honestly, like like there might be some interesting things, but you know, nothing like an entire novel like Winds of Winter wouldn't like cause you to like, there'd be so much in that. And I think like Avalon or a new standalone novel, those would all be interesting, but no, I'm way more invested in Winds of Winter. So, um, thoughts on Andor? Best Star Wars since Empire, in my opinion. Andor is absolutely the best Star Wars since Empire. It's it is it is incredible. It has no right to be so good. I wish Carmine said he was going to join me, but he hasn't yet. But we've been talking about just like how fucking amazingly good Andor is, and like why it's amazingly good. Like it's adult without being like it's an adult show, but not in the sense of like sex and violence. An adult show in the sense that like no one would be able to understand, like a child would not be able to understand all the emotional um exchanges between the characters. It's just so excellent. In fact, this is a hot take. Is Andor better than House of the Dragon? Like I understand that we're all emotionally invested in House of the Dragon, um and House of the Dragon is like can be very entertaining, but like objectively speaking, when I really think of like characterization and plot and direction and acting, like is Andor actually objectively a better show? Like if I were just as emotionally invested in the source material of Andor as I was in House of the Dragon, would I say Andor is a better show? And I think objectively speaking, it has to be like obviously like subjectively I'm like very emotionally attached to Game of Thrones properties, so like I get more excited about that. But like if I'm really talking about what's good art, Andor is much 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 better fucking show. Like Andor is so good. Oh my god, like not to spoil anything, but the fucking like I can't swim like line of Andy Serkis, like I can't swim, like, and it just makes me go back and being like, did he know that the whole time? Was he doing it the whole time knowing that he couldn't swim, or did he just realize at that point that he couldn't swim? And it's like I don't even know. Like I'm like, fuck, like it's so heart wrenching. Like that scene, like I can't swim. Um, man, man, but it's good. It's so fucking good. Everybody should be watching Andor. It's so fucking good. Um, Thoughts on the Jamie show arc and how it went. Jamie, I went back over my like reviews of Jamie in different for the different seasons. And I think I think obviously in season 8, Jaime just illogically all of a sudden goes back to Cersei with no explanation. Had they given just a few lines, like I promised that uh, um, I promised that I'd be with Cersei, and I'm not an oath breaker. Like it would have been perfect, but um, and the Jaime story, which ends with probably the best scene of the the season, which is like Brienne writing in the book, showing that he had this like full life, which should go back to which we all kind of know from the books as being very important, like him looking at that blank page and like wanting to live a full life. And they don't that scene kind of exists in Game of Thrones with like Joffrey like making fun of him, but they don't really hark back to it. He doesn't they don't mention it enough, like he's got that scene, I think it's in season 4, and then they never mention anything for the rest of the show. Seasons 5, 6, 7, 8, we have no inkling that he like wants to live a better life and fill that page. And so they probably needed more mentioning of that, but if you're gonna pick one character that actually whose story was done fairly well in all of Game of Thrones, Jaime is probably the character that wins, right? Like he's the one that actually like has resolution, a sad George R. R. Martin ending. Because I think of all the other characters, like Arya is like, where the fuck did that come from? Like, what's west of Westeros? Like, like doesn't Jon going north of a wall? Like all of these ones that don't make any sense. Like Sansa's was moderately done okay. She like was asking about whether armor had some leather on in the inside and proving that she was a good ruler, and then she ends up being a ruler. But if I'm really saying like thinking about where the different characters went and whether thematically like fit their character arc, Jaime's probably the best one. I'm not saying it's a high bar, but Jaime's probably like I think Jaime might be my favorite story from Game of Thrones, the show, just because the Brienne white book scene kind of saves it at the end. I can't think of anybody else that I like their ending as much. Yeah, so you can determine exactly the velocity of US cash at least. You only need to sum 5 interchanges to do it. Well, it's beyond my knowledge. I'm not sure. Uh, what that really um, exactly what that means. I'm not any expert on the velocity of money. Yeah. My econ education is um, mostly deal with trade policy, and like reading on interesting stuff with regards to um, uh, unemployment and stuff like that. What's your thoughts on the bright fire theory? There's not much to the bright fire theory. The bright fire theory is essentially that, well, there's black fires out there who Aegon could be a black fire, but then Aryan Brightflame also had a kid that was passed over for the throne, and we never know what happened to him. And so the idea is that somehow the two lines like intermixed, and Aegon, young Griff, is both a Blackfire and a descendant of Aryan Brightflame. There's nothing much to the theory. The problem is that Aryan Brightflame returns from exile and fights against the Blackfires, and so he so I don't see why their two families would like get along. Um, but that's the way. Hmm. Let's. But so I don't think it would be that important. I mean, the problem is that like even I think even when Brightfire was created, there was we only had this idea that there was a couple branches of extra Targaryens out there, and since then, now we know that there's a fuckload. Like you know, Sarah Targaryen and any kids that she had, swapped babies, like area Targaryen being swapped and surviving, children of Baela and Rhaena Targaryen who like married into House Hightower. There's so many extra Targaryens now that it kind of dilutes the importance of Aerion Brightflame as well. Um, if you played Ultima, were you a script kiddie? I'm not sure what script kiddie means. So, um, yeah, I'm not sure what a script kiddie means, but a unskilled individual who uses scripts or programs such as small web shells developed by others. Um, for malicious purposes. Yeah, I don't know anything about like that with regards to Ultima. Um, but no, I mean I just really liked the Dang, I'm not sure. I mean, I can talk about Ultima forever. I'm just this confused. Preston completely misunderstands Succession. Did not have that on my 2022 bingo card. I haven't seen the later seasons of Succession. Jeez. Or is he talking about like Trump and Trump Jr.? Because that's definitely something that the writers were thinking about, at least when they did season one. Whether they changed things around, like, that's something else. I mean, obviously, it's also supposed to be like Fox News and all these different things. But of course, you're supposed to think about Don Jr. I mean, they've said this in interviews, but yeah, season 2 and 3 are better. Okay, that's good. That's good to know. That's good to know. Um, Andor episodes 2 and 5 sucked ass. Yeah, I mean, I could see like in the middle of the stories, but when I think about like each of them being chapters, like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter we've only had 3 chapters, and we've had like an intermission episode. The intermission episode was kind of forgettable, but man, it's man, I really enjoyed. Like I finished the first 3 episodes, the first chapter, and I was like, oh, this is a pretty good show. And then I liked chapter 2 and chapter 3 each better. I was like, chapter 2 was way better than chapter 1, and now chapter 3 was way better than chapter 2. The show just keeps getting better. Um, could R plus A equals J be made up by time traveling Bran to use Jon and Dany? Once he's done using them against the others, we'd never know the truth. Only Bran would. Hmm. An interesting notion, right? This actually makes me think about oh, Carmine. Hey there, how's it going? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was busy doing some stuff. I'm sorry, I interrupted you in the middle of this. No, 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 no,
Oh,
no.
I was saying
Sorry.
like had we this is but you know how the end of Game of Thrones has time traveling Bran or Bran testifying against Littlefinger and then Littlefinger being executed. So like um the problem is we actually do know that Littlefinger is guilty of various things, and so you're not supposed to feel bad when Littlefinger is executed. But what's kind of funny is like imagine you didn't have those scenes and you were just blind and you had to like be like, wait a minute, Like, did Littlefinger actually do those things? Did Bran just like lie and kill a dude? Like, we have a testimony. Like, like he should have been like, wait, your testimony is this like boy who claims that he has supernatural powers to like see the world, and you're gonna execute me over that, you know? Like, um, how much can time traveling?
That's why my idea has always been like, because there is no fucking evidence and you can't just take Bran's word for it,
Yeah,
that he would be exiled, but he'd be forced to walk out of Winterfell, out of the north, barefoot, not barefoot, but like without a horse or supplies, thereby condemning him to death, essentially. They just wanted to give Arya that girl boss moment, which is so lame.
yeah, yeah. It was. I hated the scene because she put this look like, oh, we got you, and it's like as if they did anything. It was like a literal ex machina moment where God comes in and saves them. You know, like people use dia ex machina like all the time, like for every kind of person comes in and saves them, but it's supposed to actually be God cheaply coming in and saving everybody. And this situation was actually a God coming in and cheaply saving everybody. Um, so, um, this is interesting. Besides hating women, which is a good answer, why do people make excuses for Crispin and say he was justified in his hate towards Rhaenyra and his loyalty to Alicent? This is very funny. The how like when we see people online debating like the green versus black, team green versus team green versus team black, how many hoops people will jump through for Criston Cole. Meanwhile, saying like, "Oh, Rhaenyra, like she's not taking her responsibilities seriously," and like trashing on Rhaenyra for all these little things early on. I think if you're gonna trash Rhaenyra, it's for murdering a dude. Like I think that's I think that's over. That's pretty bad. But besides her murdering a dude, it's really tough to really blame her for a lot of her actions. Like I think she was pretty well like maybe one could say, oh, she put Crispin in a workplace kind of situation, put him in a bad situation where she used her authority to influence sex. But maybe there's that. But I've seen a lot of stuff about how like, oh, she's not taking responsibility for her actions, or she was flaunting her affair with Harwin Strong. She's completely, that affair with Harwin Strong is completely understandable, completely and utterly understandable. So I'm trying to think of any other excuses for Criston Cole, for hatred towards Rhaenyra and loyalty to Alicent. Carmine, can you think of anything besides just like a good?
So in one of my review videos, I talk about this, and someone sent me this comment on Reddit
Yeah.
about Criston Cole. Do you mind if I read it real quick?
Sure. Go for it.
So basically, this person on the House of the Dragon subreddit, rar34943, says, after reading so many comments about Sir Christian, I feel like most people in the sub have no idea about sexual guilt, and I'm jealous of you guys. A lot of comments about Sir Christian Cole were about how stupid he was, how he was getting free royal sex, and ruled everything by screaming about his honor. Also saw people calling him an incel and a simp.
Hmm.
As a woman who was raised in a conservative and sex-negative society, ironically, Criston Cole is the character that I mostly relate with. Sexual guilt is very real and very strong when you grow up believing how premarital sex can devalue you or make you unclean.
Hmm.
Heck, even masturbation used to cause depressive episodes for me. Another aspect is, when I got dumped, even for justified reasons, the first thing that used to come in mind was that I was used for sex, which was not true, and how the guy dishonored me. This
Hmm.
feeling of being unreasonably being mad was also very real too. So Christian clearly views sex the same way. He feels that breaking his vows made him a lesser man, and when he sees that, Rhaenyra doesn't want to keep him as a side piece. He truly feels insulted. Yes, he processes the worst way possible by breaking news. Free sex doesn't mean that you know, blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
That's why I'm jealous of people. So, yeah, basically it. So, I agree with this person.
Yeah, I mean,
Makes a lot of
I
sense.
understand that position. That position is well thought out. It's and I understand exactly what they're talking about. Um, that and also like if we did it the other way, like let's do a sex gender reversal, and it's a young man like seducing a woman in that situation, and then she gets angry and is like, oh, you want me to be your whore and all of this, like, would we have more sympathy for the character? The problem with what's being said is that Criston Cole didn't grow up in that sex negative society. We know that he already grew up sowing his oats, having sex, like having premarital sex. We already know that that was his character. And so all
So
of a
this is a
sudden,
problem with the
yeah,
showrunners and the writers, if I may interrupt you for a minute.
yeah,
Yes, he did do that. Someone also wrote that in the comments. He did do that, but what if he changed as a person and became a new, more religious individual? They should have established that.
should have established that. Right. It's the same like, people are like, oh, well, his white cloak meant a lot to him. Well, we don't know that his white cloak meant a lot to him, like his honor or anything like that. That came out of freaking nowhere. That all of a sudden his honor is all he has, and his white cloak is all he has. Like that, we had one shot of him putting his white cloak on a chair, and then the next thing you know, it's like his white cloak is his and his honor is the most important thing, as if we're like, please insert Aerys Oakhart's like story in here. Oh, you want to know how Criston Cole is feeling? Please see Aerys Oakhart. Like, like, well, you can't just assume that everybody has like read Aerys Oakhart and is placing like our feelings for Aerys Oakhart onto Criston Cole. So yeah, it's there's not much justification for Criston Cole's feelings, especially 10 years 10 years of that shit. Eddie murdered a dude, so I don't have any sympathy for him. Do I have any sympathy for anybody? I don't know.
He murdered a guy because he assumed that Beesbury was insulting Alicent. So he didn't just murder a guy. He murdered a guy for essentially no fucking reason.
Yeah,
It would be one thing if he was in on the plot and he was like spearheading it like he did in the books. No, he just murdered a guy because he won't suffer any insults towards the queen.
right. The guy wouldn't shut up.
Just not a good
Yeah,
reason.
which makes us like which people are like, oh, did he have a logical reason for killing Joffrey Lonmouth? Well, the character that we've now seen seems to just fucking kill people, so it makes me think no. Like, poor Beesbury. Poor Beesbury. Um, Preston, do you ever intend to cover World of Ice and Fire weird stuff, Sotheros, deep ones, brindled men, whether any of these will be relevant? Um, I haven't covered them too much because I don't necessarily think that they're going to be relevant. Like, I think the World of Ice and Fire, for the most part, was just slapped together really fast in order to publish a book. And a lot of it's been retconned too, like especially the Targaryen history stuff. There's stuff in the World of Ice and Fire that's just completely different once Fire and Blood came out, which makes me think that George didn't really care that much about it. He also like purposely steered clear of areas of the world that we would care about, like Slaver's Bay. There's nothing written on it. Karth, there's nothing written about it in the World of Ice and Fire. Instead, you're like, oh, I've got all of this fucking insight on the maze makers of Lorath. You're like, okay, but like, so I think most of the weird stuff in there just generally is there, one, to play homage to some of the books that George wrote, and to kind of show like that the world is older than we think it is, and that it has a weird, interesting past that is perhaps not exactly what we heard with these legends of the first men and the children of the forest, that there's stuff that might even be older than the children of the forest, or at least the invasion of the first men, and history doesn't really make sense. People have steel before they have bronze, and there's contradictions here and there, and that's just the kind of generally what's getting pushed forward. That you read it and you're like, okay, everybody has an Azor Ahai story. Okay, we got that. History doesn't really make sense because stuff is all over the place. It's out of time. There seems to be an advanced civilization that's older than the first men, and that's about it. I don't think that like any of it's too relevant to what we're going to see in A Song of Ice and Fire, because I do think it was just slapped together like really, really fast. Preston, Khal Drogo's body, bonfire, dragon hatching, alchemical magic stuff in regards to powder. Are his pyres, nitrate found in night soil, cottonwood trees, sulfur and iron, charcoal. Interesting. All the stuff for gunpowder is potentially in Khal Drogo's bonfire. Even the sulfuric could come from dragon eggs or Drogo's body. Oh, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. I mean, it's very George R. R. Martin to put in modern cop outs for scenes. When Feast for Crows came out, it took a long time for people to be like, oh, wait a minute. Like, people's first reads, they didn't get that Aaron Dampere was doing CPR for people. Like I read reviews that are like, oh man, well, we read this book and like this dude was resurrecting people on beaches and we never got back to that story of him resurrecting people. And you're like, oh, you mean he was doing mouth to mouth resuscitation? Like there's usually an out. And he has magical stuff and then he walks it back. Like Melisandre, we from in Clash of Kings and A Storm of Swords, we believe she is 100% magical, and then we're given this chapter that she's kind of a fraud, which makes us all of a sudden question all sorts of things, like, where do shadow babies come from, and how did Orell's eagle like burst into flames, stuff like that. Like, was that really? How much was Melisandre really managing? If this is a woman that you puts powder in her pockets in order to make flames like dance and to fool people, So I think that's very interesting that that Drogo's pyre is kind of big and it has there's various explosions in it at various times that make it seem like it's magical, but that there's actually just natural stuff in what's being burned that caused that. I think that's right up George R. R. Martin's it's right up his aisle, and like I think that could be the case. I'm gonna have to reread that scene and think about that. But yeah, no, I that's some interesting stuff. I could totally see that happening. On why, huh? I'm gonna reread that scene and see what the fire was doing and what's in there. Thoughts on the Empire of the Dawn, Valyrians learning how to tame dragons from these ancient people. Connection with Bran seeing dragons in a shy. Yeah, the dragon seeing. So Bran does have a little vision of dragons when he like goes around the world. The actual line is, let me see here. It's an interesting little line at the end of his vision of he sees Jon like cold and alone. He sees, Here it is. He lifted his eyes and saw clear across the narrow sea to the free cities and the green Dothraki sea and beyond, to Vase Dothrock under its mountains, to the fabled lands of the Jade Sea, to Ashai by the shadow, where dragons stirred beneath the sunrise. Now, I'm sure that when George wrote that line, his intention was the dragon eggs are from Ashai. The dragons come from those dragon eggs, and like that's what he's writing. But now the dragon eggs have been retconned, so now they're freaking Alyssa Farman's like stolen eggs from Dreamfire and stuff like that. I mean, so you know, did George forget about this line? But we have examples of dragons being other places, or at least we hear about dragons being other places before the Valyrians had them. You know, we have Jonquil and Florian's dragon. We have Serwyn and the Mirror Shield's dragon. And so, you know, this idea that there are other dragon riders out there, at least according to legend, well, those two dragons with Florian and Serwyn, we're not sure if they don't seem like they were ridden. But then people have this other idea that like, oh, dragons were invented by taking like bloodworms of Valyria and wyverns and crossbreeding them and something like that, and using genetic engineering in order to create something to bond with the men of the Valyrians, and that's how they dominated dragons. So you know, it's always, you know, it's what we really have is a history that doesn't really make sense about dragons. It contradicts. So could there, you know, are those dragon eggs actually from Ashai? Are they from Alyssa Farman? Are dragons existing in different parts of the world? All of these are possible. I'm trying to think.
You know what would be great?
Yeah.
I remember you had a video where you took you had this video where you took the opening from Lord of War and you put it in a video, and I was wondering, I was like, that was so cool. Like, where did you get that? You're like, oh, from Lord of War with Nicolas Cage. Wouldn't it be cool if like they had like a nice short film about Dany's dragon eggs going all over the place? At first, they were with Alyssa Farman, and then she trades them in. They're in Bravos, and they go all the way to Ashai, and they somehow come all the way back by the time a Game of Thrones begins.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because so what Carmine is talking about is the beginning of Lord of War. The rest of the movie is kind of not good at all, but the opening of Lord of War is one of the best openings for a movie you'll ever see. Like if you're talking like top 5 like openings for a movie, and I would say that like Deadpool is in that top 5. Like it's just an incredible opening, but they show that the opening is the manufacturing of a bullet, and they like go and they show the bullet being manufactured and like shipped all the way to Africa and like put into a gun and then like used to kill somebody, and showing the entire process of, you know, to as a metaphor of like how the entire like how our system works, you know, and how it's all interconnected. It's a really brilliant opening. If there's one thing, you know, it's on YouTube, you can watch it. But and so I was influenced by this, and I was like, okay, so this is for my Killing Bran series. I decided to take the Catspaw's dagger and like do a little story at the beginning where the Catspaw's dagger is being followed through history. And you know, it starts in Valyria and it heads over, and it's, you know, somehow,
little did you know.
Right. And now it's like, well, geez, now the Valyrian dagger has this whole other story to it. That was not part of that. I guess it was should have been put in the Targaryen family and getting used by Alicent and in the hands of Aegon and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, you know, where dragon eggs and where learning how to ride dragons comes from, I don't know if we'll ever get the full answer. if George just wants it to be a mystery. But I think there must have been some sort of genetic engineering at some point to have at least their minds like connected, or maybe it's not necessary. Maybe in the same way that like dire wolves and Starks, they just spent time around them and started bonding with them. You know, so who knows? Who knows? Or they maybe they were able to telepathically bond with worms for a while, and then when they were all underground. Like if I'm going most George R. Martin, it would be like, okay, there's a nuclear war, everybody went underground, the Valyrians are underground, living in their tunnels, getting inbred. A few of them develop telepathic powers. They realize that they can telepathically bond with worms. Then they've been telepathically controlling these worms, and then they're like, okay, let's breed these worms with like dragons, and now we can telepathically bond with dragons, and that's the history of it. Like that would be the most George R. R. Martin kind of story. Otto hasn't done anything wrong technically. That's true. Depends if he knows about like how much he knows about people poisoning people and things like that. Otto hasn't killed anybody, I suppose.
Well, he plotted to kill. That's premeditated, right? Look,
I
he's
mean, it's true
plotting
that
to
he's
kill.
just in
Was
that
it
room.
Mysaria?
Yeah, that's true. Well, yeah. Let's see.
And Mysaria accuses him, at least in the original script, she accuses him of being somewhat complicit in all the terrible things happening in Flea Bottom and around King's Landing's poor areas. They removed that in the final version, but apparently there was like some soft slavery going on. I'll have to go back to the leaks. Yeah, some like very soft slavery happening.
Yeah, the whole thing, like looking back, and I haven't done my part 2 of House of the Dragon review, but it's funny going through the whole thing and realizing that Mysaria is the best character in the story. Like she's the most moral character, and because she actually like wants to help people. Like no one else wants to help anyone. Like some people want to actively harm people, but Mysaria is the only person that cares about helping other people. And so you're saying that Otto was like not just complicit, but like knew about it, was perhaps getting money from it or something in the original script.
It was something like that, yeah, and she was determined to put a stop to it. That's really all that was there. I'm sure they changed that around once they realized, oh, slavery's been outlawed in Westeros for years.
Yeah, so I think they're also trying to walk things back, like they realized that they went pretty hard into Otto being evil, and they want to make him like a little less evil as time goes on or something.
More gray.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to. I think like at that point, like I mean, he has control over Criston Cole. He should have like imprisoned Criston Cole. Like, dude, you're out of control. You just killed a dude. What are you doing? What are you doing? Like any responsible human being would get rid of Criston Cole, put him in prison. That's the problem with Alicent. Like Alicent hasn't technically killed anyone, but she was completely fine with Laurie killing his family, and then says like, "Oh, do what you need to do to get rid of that spy network," and then so, she's complicit. Excuse me. A fan identifies as Demi-Urge. Thank you very much. Also, was the Council of 101 gerrymandered. What's Demi-Urge? What do you think that's a joke?
I have no fucking idea, but I'm about to find out.
Autonomous creative force of decisive power. Oh, in Neoplatonic schools of philosophy, the Demi-Urge is an artisan-like figure responsible for fashioning and maintaining the physical universe. I think this is one of those jokes like, so there's this attempt at, there's this conservative attempt at The Onion called the Babylon Bee. And uh, Elon Musk got really upset that the Babylon Bee, which isn't funny at all, got
You don't
banned from
think some
Twitter.
of some of their stuff is a little funny? Come on,
Well,
just
the
some
thing
of their
is
stuff
somebody
is a
pointed
tad.
out that like the Babylon Bee, like they keep going to the same joke over and over again, which is blah blah identifies as blah. Like, like, oh, these liberals, you can identify as anything, and that's like the joke. Like, so everything is
Really?
like,
Because on their site right now is Arizona announces that they have finished counting and Calvin Coolidge has won their 3 electoral votes. Like really? Hmm.
that's that's all
You
right.
don't think
That's
that's?
all right. That's okay.
Oh, how about this one? How
By the
about
way,
this
they've
one?
gotten
Perfect for
quite a
you.
bit. They've got to quit. They've got bigger. I mean, than they used to be. Like they actually have different articles.
How
But
about this
yeah,
one? Arizona election officials confirm ballots are being counted by George R. R. Martin. That's a good one. You got to admit that one. That's a good one. Now you're
which
just
one?
trying hard not to laugh.
Which one?
Arizona election officials confirm ballots are being counted by George R. R. Martin. That's a good one.
Okay, that's kind of
Now you're
funny.
trying hard. Now
That's
you're
kind of
trying
funny.
hard.
And even, yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Um, Experts confirm Batman the animated series was pinnacle of human civilization. All right, I concede that um, it's gotten better.
Good.
But it used to be that their only joke. But the thing is, you'll find that these jokes that they're using aren't really conservative, like slanted anymore.
Hmm.
Right? It used to be that they all had a conservative slant. So now, like, um, so now they're just kind of like, just kind of going a
Sorry, I
little.
just some
So
of these are just
the
Biden calls to congratulate Fetterman. Last 3 hours as neither can form a coherent sentence.
yeah,
I'm sorry, that's just
but
fucking hilarious.
it used to be that their only joke was, blah blah identifies as
Right, attack
you know
helicopter. That's the famous one.
yeah, a helicopter. Somebody and that was just their joke. But yeah, um, Council of 101 gerrymandered. They in a similar sense, there's a gerrymander with not gerrymander, but there's disproportionate representation in the um in the 101 is that in that how many votes does each person get? Like if you just have a lot of fiefs and they're not unified, does each person get their own vote? How many lords and ladies get votes? Do landed knights, things like that. Like
That's a very good question because all the High Lords of Westeros do your Starks, your Aarons,
right,
and then the lord like the mid level lords like the Glovers and Umbers. I'm sure they would get, but what about like the lowest level lords? And maybe I haven't been playing too many Crusader Kings, but you have like
yeah,
House House who's the House who's the fucking house you play in the Telltale game? Wow, that's gonna bother me.
Forrester.
Forrester. Then you have House Forrester, who owes their allegiance to House Glover, who owes their
Yeah,
allegiance to House Stark. Does
right.
does Forrester get a vote? Because they're like low level lords, kind of.
Yeah,
So,
but I think a bigger thing is the voting barriers is kind of like the Northerners have such a larger voting barrier than Riverlanders, for example, in the Council of 101, and we know that the Riverlanders were, for the most part, for the Greens, while I mean the Proto Greens and the Northerners were for the Proto Blacks, for Rhaenys versus Viserys. Um, so there is a big that like if one person only has to go a mile to vote and somebody else has to travel for a freaking month to get there. Like all the people that are on their islands in the narrow sea were for Rhaenys. The Northerners were for Rhaenys, and they all have to like sail to the mainland and then get transportation to go all the way. It's sucky. Not fair. Not fair. Isn't it a bit hypocritical that YouTubers attack YouTube but still use the platform a lot, I get I get criticizing YouTube, but again, you are using the platform. Um, it depends what you're criticizing it for. Like, a lot of people, like, these are private companies that can do as they can do as they like. Um, but employees criticize their employer all the time because they want more money or want their job to be better and easier. So that's all normal for an employee to criticize YouTube, or like a content creator to criticize YouTube. Like, and the content creators do constantly. Oh my God, we did this. Oh, the yellow check marked me again. This is the same thing as, like, you went into work and your employer, like, doesn't give you, a computer that works to do your job and then expects you to, like, do it. Like, you have your grievances. And then but then there are these, what a lot of people criticize is about, like, outsiders that aren't content creators. Like, they criticize, like, free speech and things like that don't really apply because it's a private company. So, like, there's some little things that annoy me. Like, when Carmine and I cuss, like, we like, every, like, that means, like, we can get a yellow check. We can get a yellow check mark or whatever. The yellow dollar sign us, and we make much less money on a video. So, yeah, like, they have the right to do that because they're trying to please their advertisers and they want the most advertising revenue. Sure, but we're employees and we want revenue too, so we're all fighting for the same revenue. Um, like, when your work doesn't give you the right computer to work on, yes, it's understandable because they're a company who's trying to save money, and they don't want to buy you a new computer that costs money, but at the same time you're trying to do your job and you have interests. So I don't think there's anything hypocritical. Like, YouTubers,
To be fair,
yeah,
we don't attack you. Attacking YouTube is different than complaining about some of their bad bullshit policies. For
yeah.
example, I just got attacked by Warner Brothers and the other day HBO for a video I did like months ago. That's clear. Oh, right here. I literally just went to check 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
Received a copyright claim. Copyright claim from HBO. Fans are not happy about this Game of Thrones change or House of the Dragons change. It's clearly free, fair use, yet it's being abused.
Mm-hmm.
That's a complaint. If I was going to attack YouTube, I mean, how do I even attack it?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't understand the whole, like, in general, like, this line of thinking, which if you extend it to anything, is like, are you ever allowed to complain about anything? Like, can I complain that my wife never throws anything out? Well, you're still married to her. Like, well, yeah. Am I allowed to complain that she doesn't throw anything out? Like, like you could extend this to anything, right? Like, that no one is ever allowed to complain because it's still good enough to use. Like, YouTube does a lot of incredible stuff. Carmen and I are able to have a lot of fun and have these channels and can reach millions of people around the world. That's pretty fucking awesome. Like, but at the same time, like, we get annoyed, like, by various things that YouTube does as well. I don't know if there's anything hypocritical about it. It's just like when people complain about anything, right? I don't know. I guess I don't get it. Like, people are always trying to, like, do this, like, aha, got you, hypocrite, like, moments, and I just don't get it. Like, no, it's just...
This is also ties to Elon. Recently, Elon was trying to dunk on somebody because they were criticizing about Twitter on Twitter, and Elon's like, "LOL." When you criticize Twitter on Twitter, well, yeah, who the fuck are you supposed to go and criticize Twitter to? Like, what?
I'm on my bicycle and the chain fell off, and I had to put the chain back on. You're still on that bicycle, you fucking hypocrite! Like, what? Like, what? Just. I'm not allowed to complain about something.
Am I supposed to go to Adidas to complain about Twitter? To Adidas? Like, where am I supposed to go to complain about Twitter?
Yeah, I mean...
To the source.
Everything, just because something, like, I don't know. They have these like people have these ideas that like all of a sudden everybody should just like shut up and stop complaining if you find anything like like workable or at all to any degree. Um, well. Plus, like I think there's some other criticisms. Like people are like, oh, why does like Hassan Piker complain about capitalism when he like uses capitalism to make a lot of money? And it's like, well, that also like isn't that hypocritical? And it's like, no, like no, that's not either because that's the world we live in. Like if you were all playing basketball and you didn't think 3-point lines should be a thing, you'd like it doesn't mean you shouldn't shoot 3-pointers because the current game has 3-pointers in it. Like, so you kind of are also bound by like what exists, and what kind of just odd, this like desire for everybody to be like, aha, hypocrite. Like what? No.
This is completely random, but I kind of have like egg on my face right now because I'm over here saying, "Oh, this Babylon Bee, that's pretty funny," and then I scroll down a little bit. The legendary journey of Kevin Sorbo, a bee interview. No, Kevin Sorbo is fucking trash. What are you guys doing?
I mean, at the same time, it's not the Onion either. It's not the Onion. Like, let's be honest. Favorite movie, favorite TV series outside of A Song of Ice and Fire universe, favorite actor, actress, or both. Doesn't need to be current. Jeez, this is pretty huge. Pretty huge question. Jeez. Man. I'm trying to remember like some of the stuff I was recommending in the past few years. But I'm trying to think like things I really got into over the years. Like I was really into Star Trek for a long time. I was really into Angel for a long time. Favorite movies. And there's a lot of movies that I like were my all-time favorite. Now years have gone by since I've like re-ranked and thought about it. Like I really liked Fight Club and Donnie Darko and stuff. Like really, really liked them. And then as I got older, I'm like, like probably not as strong as I thought, but I haven't re-examined, and really thought like what movies do I really like again, and really really speak to me. But that's like too large of a question for me to answer. I don't know, Carmine. If you were given this question, what would you say? Like, is it just too big?
You're not gonna like my favorite movie because you've ripped on it surprisingly quite a bit. No, I like Godfather. I like Casino and Goodfellas more than Godfather. They're all good films, but no, I like The Departed. I think The Departed I would put in my top 3. I really like The Departed.
Wow. Okay. Do you like Godfather 2 better than 1, or do you like 1 better than 2?
I like 2 better than 1. I know everyone loves to jerk off 1. It's fine. But
really, I would say
like
the
2.
reverse. I'd say everybody likes to jerk off 2.
Oh, I like 2 a lot. I love like the parallels between him and Vito. It's always good.
Yeah, I mean, I understand like that's the structure of the 2 stories being both prequel and sequel, but I think 2 though has some weaknesses when they go to Congress and stuff and go to Cuba and you're kind of like, what's going on in the plot, like. But I admit that it's got more emotional moments. And I think like that ending scene with like Fredo, the performance of Fredo in 2 is pretty unreal. But yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to think about that question. It's just like it's so like. Let me think. Let me look up like greatest movies of all time. And see if I how many I agree with. Like doesn't like AFI's 100 years of movies. Okay. If I
Citizen Kane is always number 1 though.
Citizen Kane, It's all right. Casablanca. I
See,
like Casablanca a lot, but it's all right. Okay. Godfather, Gone with the Wind, Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence of Arabia is a pretty brilliant movie. Um, Wizard of Oz. The Graduate, I fucking hate. I think The Graduate is the most overrated piece of shit. Oh my god. If you take out like like Paul Simon videos in the middle of the movie, like it's a 30-minute movie. It's so overrated. On the Waterfront, I haven't seen it. Schindler's List is it's a trudge. Singing in the Rain, I haven't seen. Wonderful Life. Um, yeah, I would. Sunset Boulevard, I haven't seen. Bridge over the River Kwai, it's okay. Some Like It Hot, I haven't seen. Star Wars, never heard of it. All About Eve. African Queen, I've seen. I don't think it's that good. Psycho's pretty good. Chinatown's all right. I don't know if it ends
let me see
well.
something here.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's
So
Nest.
Quentin Tarantino recently came out and said the greatest film ever made of all time is the original first Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I've never seen it, but
I've never seen it in
he says that
full.
film is impeccable.
So the big deal with it is because they didn't have, and it was almost an accident, but it's because they didn't have very good camera and they were kind of filming it on the cheap. It makes it look like it's a film documentary, almost by accident. And because of the film type, it's really quite uncomfortable to watch because you're being signaled this is real the entire time when it's not. When it's just a regular like slasher movie. So I can understand him saying that because it's like it's such a like the visual medium and everything is like ends up being very clever in the end to give that visceral feeling. But I don't know if you watched it now because other people have done the found footage shit like since if you'd get that
Do
feeling.
you remember? Do you remember Blair Witch Project when that first came out? I
Oh yeah,
saw
yeah,
it like a
yeah.
couple years
I'm
after
from
it first came out.
Maryland,
As a
so it was a
kid,
big deal. It was a big deal.
as a kid
Yeah.
scared the shit out of me. Holy fuck! It felt real.
Yeah, absolutely. But then like once they start doing it like takes away. So you can't like go
Hmm.
back and watch it now and get the same feeling because it's been like copied until like now our brain doesn't process the media that way anymore. So I really liked One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's a great movie. Oh, 2001. That's a beautiful movie. Probably one of my favorite. Um, I like a lot of Kubrick. Raging Bull. I've only seen parts of it. E.T. I don't know if it's the greatest ever. I guess. You know what movie I think is one of the greatest ever? Jaws. I can
Hmm.
watch Jaws over and over and over again. It's so good, so well paced. Um, Annie Hall. I thought it was funny. I don't know if it would hold up. Um, West Side Story is pretty fucking brilliant as a musical. Oh, yeah, no, these are all good. Clockwork Orange, I think is kind of overrated. Jaws is on here at 48. So I don't know. My favorite ever. Oof, oof. I mean, I only watch kids' movies these days. Like, and some of them are pretty good. Um, how do feuds like Blackwood and Bracken last millennia? So apparently, the Hatfield McCoy thing is like legitimately true, and like there's still Hatfields and McCoys that like hate each other. Um, I think like it just takes like because families are big and you're gonna have one idiot in every family who's gonna do something stupid and remember something from the previous generation and screw it up. I think these feuds get reignited over and over again because somebody like remembers something. And so I think it lasts millennia because like like some grandson read some history book and then it acts like a dumbass even though like 19 of the 20 people are all cool, there's always going to just be one dumbass, But I mean, and it seems odd because it's like these small houses, but we see in the real world like feuds lasting many millennia between ethnic groups, and between religions over the dumbest shit. And so, people that think the Jews killed Jesus, like that kind of stuff is going to go on forever. Could it exist in one family, one small family? Yeah, I mean it's literature and it's an exaggeration and stuff like that. But I think it could. I mean, the fact that the house exists that long, I think, is harder to believe than the feud. I think feuds can last that long, and especially when you're talking about like lands and competing over lands and wanting to get lands back and who's making money and like whose sheep are grazing on which area. Like there are some things built into the geography that are always going to cause some troubles. Like France and England, like they're next to each other. They're gonna always have that. They're always gonna have like something come up because they're next to each other. But I think I think something like that. You're always going to have something. They're next to each other. They're living on top of each other. There's geographical issues, but I think people can, if they start remembering their history, it's just a recipe for hate. To quote Bad Religion.
I'm assuming if this person remembered the Bracken Blackwood scene from House of the Dragon, which I'm writing right now, like which some of the best scenes of House of the Dragon season 1. I fucking love that scene so much because of the Bracken guy. Protection! Oh, yeah. The princess has a dragon, you dumb cunt! I just love the way.
My favorite part of that is the fact that Rhaenyra liked him. Like he was an absolute douche, and she's just like, I like that one. And you're like, oh my God, like it's the one dude on the whole trip she likes is Bracken. That grin she had, she's just like, I quite like that one. You're like, oh man. My God, Luther's speech from the last Andor episode. It felt like a Doran Martell scene we never got in Game of Thrones TV show. Legit Doran vibes. That speech, which, man oh man. So the last episode of Andor, not to spoil anything, but there is one of the characters gives this speech, and it's straight up like soliloquy. Like every ounce of my being says that the scene shouldn't have worked. Like it shouldn't have worked. Like it shouldn't have. He should have. Like him rattling on about his feelings, telling us his feelings for minutes at a time rather than like showing us our feelings. Like it's like with regards to filmmaking, he's doing everything wrong. Like it's literally like, tell me your character motivation, and he goes and he tells us his character motivation for minutes, and it shouldn't fucking work. But fucking Skarsgård, man, he's so fucking good because it's like he acts it out so well, and the other character is just like is also acting so well, just looking on with this fearful face as he goes on this like long diatribe, and it shouldn't, but it was. I chalk that up to fucking Skarsgård being top-notch actor. Oh my God, that fucking last episode. Yeah.
Like, how great would it be if, like, Skarsgård has Dedra Miro as, like, his informant as well, and he's playing them both against... Oh, that would be so fucking cool. Just dudes, that last episode... By the way, I have to show you this. I want to do another Andor...
I mean, isn't it incredible that we're getting to, like, episode 10 of the series is, like, the best one so far? Like, you know how, like, they try to put stuff at the very end, or, like, the last episode of the first episode or whatever, but, like... Episode 10, like the ending episode to the third chapter, is the strongest episode so far. It was so fucking good. I can't swim.
This YouTuber who's like one of those, he's not a grifter. He doesn't get on the video and like say his opinions. What he does is he takes these clips out of context and likes to insert like this like douchey clickbaity title. The fucker. Here's he hates Andor. And according to him, I want to discuss this more in like a later podcast if you're down. I'm not gonna call the guy out because
No,
small
no.
fucking channel. I don't get called a bully. But he goes, I hate Andor. It's aggressively anti-Star Wars. And then in another comment, he replies, it's disturbing that they only hire people who obviously and loudly despise the genre. Because Tony Gilroy has kind of, I think he's got on record as saying he doesn't like Star Wars that much. My man, I don't give a fuck if you hate Star Wars with every fiber of your being. I will throw billions of dollars at you for you to handle everything Star Wars going forward if it's on the quality of Andor. Because Andor, who fucking cares about this character? Now everybody does, because holy shit, this has been phenomenal.
I mean, yeah, they proved me wrong in like I thought the show was gonna be so mid and so like boring and like what who cares about this guy? Like Rogue One was a forgettable movie, same dudes, nothing character, and I was so wrong. I was so wrong. The show is excellent. Better than House of the Dragon. Do you like it better than House of the Dragon?
Don't ask me that. I need to.
I mean, I was saying that like
and...
we're so emotionally invested that we probably enjoy House of the Dragon more, but it's not really fair. Like if I were actually to say like objectively speaking, what's better art? I would be like, yeah, Andor's better art, like by far. It's better acted, it's better written, it's better paced. It has more real human emotion. Like it's a better representation of like humanity. It's just so good. And
I want to do a like the best shows of 2022, but I don't even think House of the Dragon would be in my top 3. Andor is definitely in my top 3. I don't think House of the Dragon would be my top 3.
Yeah, it just has no like it has no right. Like it has no right. Like we've been laughing at Disney for being able to produce nothing. Like just being like, oh, they're only interested in the money. Like churning out fucking Baby Yoda toys. Like, and then they fucking produce this. How?
People keep saying like the reason I brought that guy up is because and once again I want to go into this later on in another podcast. My man here needs to understand that it's not that it's anti-Star Wars, it's just that it's something new and it's okay to like, move past it because a lot of people are still nostalgic over like the original trilogy and the original trilogy and the feel of it, and like I get a lot of that is nostalgic, but you're never going to get that back.
Yeah.
If Star Wars is going to evolve and change to, reach a wider audience, I think this is what it looks like, and we should strive to like want to see more of this, because Book of Boba Fett, I would argue, is probably the worst show of 2022 that I've seen.
Book of Boba Fett is it represents everything that's wrong with Star Wars, where they're trying to shove references and toys into something to to produce, and then to seed spin-offs constantly and all this shit to grow their market. And Andor is just I don't know, like how did it happen? How did this lightning in a bottle happen?
It's not Star Wars. That's why it's so good. You said it best. It's not Star Wars.
It's not Star Wars. And like I agree, like when he makes the point like it's aggressively anti-Star Wars, I can't disagree with that. Like I can't disagree with it. Like it's kind of true.
This guy here makes a very good point. King of Mad Cows. Andor is like when Star Trek went from TNG to Deep Space Nine. Yeah. Like how the fuck you like the whole concept of Star Trek is going around exploring strange new worlds, but now they're on this fucking space station and there's war all over the place. Mm-hmm. What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's
Deep Space Nine, best Trek, baby.
It's true. Though I'd say that the difference in quality between Deep Space, like I'd say Deep Space Nine is a slight step up from TNG, while Andor is a fucking like just leaps and bounds better than what's been done before. Like I just can't. I who would have thought? Who would have thought that I'd be gushing about a fucking Star Wars show?
You know why it's better than House of the Dragon? Because it does set up better. It sets everything up way better than House of the Dragon.
Oh yeah,
and that's a little unfair considering House of the Dragon is a story spread across like years. Which okay, fine, but Andor kind of is as well, spread across like multiple.
I'm saying they're pulling, they're weaving a narrative of and like when you step back from the show and you go, okay, well, what's the show about? Well, it's about this politician on Coruscant who's trying to secure funds for this rebel leader who's trying to pull in different factions, and this one dude who's trying to escape a prison, and his friends and his mom back on their planet who are dealing with like imperial like increase in control. Like it's not even like a very cohesive setting.
On
But it
paper, it
works.
sounds boring.
Oh yeah, and Empire bureaucrats like arguing about reports. like it's there's nothing.
The politics between Mon Mothma and that guy, so good. Where did that come from? That came out of nowhere. I thought the Mon Mothma plot stuff would be the weakest. It has not been. It has not been at all.
There's no weak. Well, I mean, the weakest plot right now is his home planet, but like that's about it.
Yeah,
and it's not bad. It's just,
but that's because nothing's happening there besides torture.
Yeah,
which,
but
yeah.
By the way, do you think Andy Serkis knew that he didn't know how to swim from the beginning, or did it just occur?
I don't know. I kind of wish they answered that, but at the same time, I kind of wish I'm glad they didn't, because you don't know if he survived or not. Which,
right? I suppose if he said it more confidently, like he just like everybody's running and he just kind of like slows down, it would have been more obvious that like he knew he didn't swim from the beginning. But like rather than like running and then being like, oh fuck, that's right. So
my man does know how to fucking swim. Where are you from? Tatooine? Like, how the fuck do you not know how to swim, bro? What is
a lot of people don't know how to swim. You know, here a lot of people don't know how to swim. Yeah. But the long tradition of believing that ghosts are in the water. Was Marwyn meant to be a bigger character since he was mentioned in A Game of Thrones? Do you think his role in the story has changed? Marwyn definitely was meant to be a bigger character. We kind of know this from the back and forth between George R. R. Martin and his editor with regards to like the prologue that was recently found. But yeah, like one of his main goals for A Feast for Crows at the beginning was to introduce this character of Marwyn and kind of expand on who he was and stuff like that. And for the most part we get that, but we haven't been able to get back to Old Town in so long. The fact that A Dance with Dragons had no mention, I mean, unless you go with like a sort of like parallel Lady Dustin kind of path, is probably the only kind of mention that we get of Marwyn again. But the fact that Marwyn like appears in A Game of Thrones just kind of shows that George definitely planned for this Marwyn character from the beginning. He's supposed to be big. He's supposed to be huge. Same with House Hightower, but they just haven't. He just hasn't yet had the chance to expand the role. It should be a Winds of Winter thing. Like Marwyn should be huge, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I mean, some people think, well, maybe if Marwyn is secretly Makoro or something, maybe he was in A Dance with Dragons. But yeah, no, Marwyn's huge. Marwyn's big. There's no denying that Marwyn is going to be a major player going forward. Could Surviving the Pyre be a leftover from George R. R. Martin writing only a pyrokinetic awakening? Dragons were likely legends, fossils till close to publishing. That's a good point. So George R. R. Martin, when he started Wildcards, every writer was supposed to have their own main character going forward, and then you'd write stories about your character, and then they'd be put together in an anthology. And so in the beginning, George R. R. Martin's character was actually a girl with pyrokinesis. And I think the problem was, and I think he put a lot of time into this, but the problem was actually Firestarter, the Stephen King movie is that the one with Drew Barrymore? 1984 film. I think he was thinking about doing pyrokinesis for his character, but then even though Firestarter had been out for a few years, I'm trying to remember when the first Wildcards book was. Was it like 89? But whatever the point is that he eventually decided that no. Oh no, I'm sorry. Wildcards came out in 87. That makes a little more sense. So he was thinking about this for a while, and then his character was going to be a pyrokinesis girl, and then Firestarter though was around, and he's like, nah, this pyrokinesis girl is kind of like played out. So he switched his to being from pyrokinesis to just telepathy, and he created the character of the Great and Powerful Turtle, who isn't very much of a character as George R. R. Martin himself. Like the Great and Powerful Turtle is George. Like that's just he's just so like he looks like George, he acts like George. He's from Jersey. He's from a poor family in Jersey. I think the only difference is that the Great and Powerful Turtle had a best friend, and George R. R. Martin was like, I didn't really have any friends, and that was it. Like so. It could be, and this is big, just kind of like, guess that in the back of his mind he had created this pyrokinesis girl, and that he was like, well, I've got this pyrokinesis girl, maybe that could be Daenerys, and that she'd be able to control fire or something like that. Though, in the end, he added dragons because his friend Melinda Snodgrass, or not, no, it wasn't even Snodgrass. It was the one he dedicated a Dance with Dragons, dedicated the book to, but she convinced him to put the dragons in, but he was going to do the entire series without dragons, which would have been kind of interesting. I suppose if there was a pyrokinesis girl, that'd be a big deal against ice zombies. Huh. Has Kurt Herschel impacted your opinion of him as a Hall of Famer? The man still rushed for 5,000 yards. This is like these are like these questions of like, do I think Woody Allen is a good filmmaker, or O.J. Simpson a good player, and things like this. People can be really, really excellent at something and still be, pieces of shit. But like, we kind of know that like American football gives everyone brain damage, and in my old age, as football has become less important to me because I've been traveling around, and I haven't been able to really watch it as much as I used to, and just learning more about the effects. Like, I kind of like, now getting more morally against the game in its current form. Like, if they added rules to make it safer, like they actually had tackling again, maybe I'd feel better about it. But like football, I haven't watched it in a long time because every time there's a hit, I just think about the brain damage, because I think it is a number. I think it is literally 99% of professional football players have brain damage, which makes me really like they did a study where they took 1,000 of them and found that 990 of them had brain damage. So I'm feeling less good about the sport, even though it's incredibly beautiful and entertaining sport to watch. There's no sport that's more entertaining. I can just watch a random football game of two teams that I know nothing about, and it's going to be a beautiful, entertaining game. You can't really do that with too many other sports. So it's kind of sad, But yeah, I mean, also, but people can be shitty people and be really, really good something. You can appreciate their abilities and still understand that they're bad people. Or Herschel Walker would be horrible for as a senator, but mainly just because he's a Republican. You should watch Gattaca. I do think we will practice light eugenics in the future. Yeah, I've seen Gattaca a few times. It's a very good movie. Gattaca. Gattaca. I mean, I think Jude Law actually is probably the best role in that. But yeah, obviously, that movie led to Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman getting married and having kids. But will we play light eugenics in the future? So this gets in. I think I've talked about this before about eugenics. Like eugenics, everybody practices genetic like choices in their mates and stuff. I think when we talk about eugenics and what's wrong with it, like what the Nazis did, we think and why it's wrong. We think about how bureaucracies deciding what qualities are best is probably not the best way to go. And so you kind of just have the alternative, which is let human freedom decide. And so in that sense, we all want healthy babies. So we like to mate with beautiful people rather than with Quasimodo. Deformed people are less attractive to us. So like all of us do practice. I don't know if eugenics is the right word, but all of us think about the genetic stock of our children. But the question is like genetic engineering in the future. In Gattaca, their method is they kind of like spin their sperm and separate the sperm out and analyze it, and then bring the best sperm forward to produce the best child. Which is interesting. I mean, it's sure as hell beats like throwing kids in the chasm like the Spartans did. So I don't know if like in the future we'll have that ability or whether we'll just be able to like remove certain genes. Like I'm certain that in the future, very obvious genes that cause big defects will be removed. Like, you find out that your kid has a gene that's going to give him, colon cancer. You can slice that out, nip it in the bud, and then he doesn't have cancer. I'm sure that's going to happen in the future. You don't want your kid to have, eczema, boop, gone. So the question is like, when will it stop and how far it will go? Questions for like the 25th century. Who knows? It's going to be a crazy future. But, Gattaca, we didn't get that world, but there's certainly certain ideas in Gattaca about like, if insurance companies start getting a hold of our genetic code, whether they'll charge different rates based on your genetic breakdown, your chances of getting cancers and things like that and various diseases. So there's certainly things to think about and worry about in the future with that. But Gattaca is a really, really fantastic science fiction movie in that respect. Bringing up really interesting questions to ask. And what I guess I love about Gattaca is that like it doesn't really portray. It's not so dystopian. Like it's actually like kind of a realistic portrayal of the future. It's not like super dystopian, but like it's somewhat. But where we kind of, and it provokes a lot of debate. The fact that we're still talking about Gattaca and everyone like knows exactly what we're talking about, like 25 years later, is a testament how good the movie was. How could the Greens have won the dance? Well, they pretty much did win the dance until Aegon just randomly died, right? uh I mean, I suppose, like, okay, um I guess the Starks eventually came down and, like, Hour of the Wolf kind of stuff. So if you're really talking about how the Greens should have won, everything they did with regards to dividing the blacks and, like, getting rid of their dragons was top notch. They were successful in that, in all that way, in all that. I think, had they established a better air structure so that when certain when Aegon died, and they knew who their leaders were going to be, and had they put more defenses at the neck or something to keep the Northerners, keep the Starks from coming down, I guess it would have probably worked. I mean, they were pretty close to doing it all. I I don't understand why everyone wouldn't just have, like, one big massive army in the neck all the time, keeping everybody back. Like, I understand, like, somehow Deepwood Mount only defends one way, which isn't necessarily, like, why isn't it able to defend the other way so well? So is Dunk and Egg supposed to be the Wire Sopranos of A Song of Ice and Fire? Lower key personnel stories and politics as focus, but based on individual and interpersonal relationships. I think it's. I don't know if it's really the Wire, or if George was really thinking about that. I think it's. I think Hedge Knight and Sworn Sword are supposed to be smaller tales. Yeah, he's remembering. You definitely, like, feel like they're living in a world, but, like, the grand, like, having the effects, like, big effects on the whole kingdom, aren't necessarily there to the same degree as the Mystery Knight. I think he just wanted a small little story that was supposed to be a slice of life. And then as time went on and he started, like, inventing that time period, he was like, well, I better include more about Bloodraven. I better include more about these Blackfires because I'm putting that I'm shoving that stuff into A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons. And so it's, like, on his mind. And so he wanted to, like, throw that into the setting. But I think that was more of the development of how it happened. Because Mystery Knight is just, it's kind of a very different story than Hedge Knight and Sworn Sword. Like, just in feelings of size and scope. Where all of a sudden there's armies coming in, and you're stopping a Blackfire rebellion, rather than just a little land dispute, with Sir Eustace and Rohan Weber or whatever. Let's see here. Oh, I'm way behind. This is all Andor stuff. Am I making it to the end? If you had to rank top 5 theories on your channel that George will pay off, which ones? Doran plan, Pink Letter, Ramsay wanting to get rid of the phrase. That will pay off. Let me think about, like, what ones I am, like, most secure about. Let's see here. I think that were George going to finish, which he's not, the ones that I think are the most the ones that I think that are the most likely to be true, I think time traveling Bran is probably in my mind as being the one of the ones that I think is the most likely to be true, and relating to how the story goes. I don't necessarily have the same, like, confidence with, like, getting the background on the others and stuff like that. And even if they like that would be in the Night's Watch series, and even if that were revealed, it doesn't necessarily affect the plot. Like you can kill the others without learning like everything about their backstory and stop them, or you can reveal it. It doesn't necessarily matter. So I think a lot of the stuff in there might be true, but I don't necessarily think that like revealing that, changes much. And it's quite possible that George could go forward and not reveal anything and just, but it's pretty hard to not reveal the time travel aspects of the show with Bran. You kind of have to reveal that to see how it works. Now, with regards to other stuff, like I think I'm fairly confident about uh, the Frey Civil War kind of stuff and the Veil going in on that. I think that would probably pay off. I think it's pretty clear that just looking at the appendices and who's in the Veil and how it relates mostly to the Riverlands. I mean, even earlier, somebody asked about the connection between House Wayne and House Waynwood. I think that would be most likely in there. I'm pretty confident about that. Even though, like, things like I think the Pink Letter, like I think Mance and the Pink Letter is probably true, and that's going to affect things. I think Ramsay wanting to get rid of the phrase, like that might not even be revealed. Like his true motivation, it might just happen, and we don't really think about it. So I'm not going to put that. So I think time traveling Bran. I think like Frey Civil War and the Veil stuff. I think the Pink Letter. You can get into 5. I think definitely something with the lemon tree. Whether Dany is actually a dragon seed or whatever is not necessarily might not be the case, but I think there's definitely some huge aspect of Lemongate and the House with the Red Door that's going to play a role later. What else? I think I'm fairly confident about a lot of the Cersei and Taena stuff about like friends in the Reach and which people are gonna jump to Aegon's side and House Red Wine and stuff like that. But yeah, that's about it. They're already using CRISPRs on human embryos in China and now giving kids as young as 7 growth hormones so they can keep up with Westerners. Yeah, I mean, Chinese Olympic team straight lab rats. I mean, all Olympic teams have been lab rats forever, right? Like, the fact that we take any child and like at a young age, like force them to do a single activity. I mean, drugs or whatever, but like forcing a human being into a single activity for their whole life in order to like be on TV so that you can is already kind of a creepy idea when taken to the extreme. It's so. I mean, I don't know how much is really sort of going on, but you can already select for eye color and other desirable traits, but we do that when we choose mates, right? When we choose mates, we choose desirable traits. So we're kind of already doing it. I understand that, like, is there actually anything morally wrong with it? And, I think we'll probably have that discussion in the future. Like, if designer children, like, like when you run into somebody and you're like, oh my gosh, she has beautiful blue eyes, and you're attracted to somebody because of their beautiful blue eyes. Your child has a better chance of having beautiful blue eyes. So in a sense, you're selecting, right? Is it morally different than later on being like, I would like my child to have morally blue eyes and having the genes changed? I mean, we'll see if that's the future. It probably is, but I think people's fear is that everyone's going to start looking the same, and I don't think that'll ever happen because people always want to be different, and what's different and exotic is can be attractive. Also, do you think balls in House of the Dragon at the Small Council is a nod to Westworld pearls? No, no. I actually did a long, deep dive on the balls, and the balls, like, it was really just boiled down to um, they wanted a sense of ceremony at the Small Council, and for something to visually look at at the at the table where you kind of know, like, visually speaking, when someone takes a ball and puts it into the slot, it's like Small Council session is starting. And keep in mind, like, when you think about that scene, like, if you just show somebody sitting around a table talking, you don't know how long they've been talking before. Have they just started? Have they been there an hour? These sorts of things, like, change. But when, like, you have that scene where someone goes ball in, you know that it's signaling that we're beginning the meeting. And so they wanted ceremony, and they wanted something to cue the beginning of the meeting. And I think later they wanted something for Beesbury's head to be smashed in on. But I don't think it's any nod to Westworld pearls or anything like that. In the end, it's just the fact that the balls are just kept in the center of the table in off hours, like, takes away from the fact that they're even very personalized. It's just there wasn't that much to it. It's funny how they got so much attention because they're so visually distinctive. But yeah, I read an article about it where they were interviewing showrunners about the balls, and they're just like, no, we just wanted some ceremony to the whole thing. I'm so late. Catch me up. Did we discuss how the election indicated shockingly that Americans were less cool with coup attempts than we thought? Yeah, we talked about this at the very, very beginning of the stream, but I think a lot of it had to do with abortion and stuff like that. But yes, the democracy aspects were part of it. It made me a little more feel a little better about
Optimistic?
society. Yeah. Carmine?
Well, Gen Z came out in force. I mean, not really.
Yeah.
First off, Gen Z came out in force. No, they didn't. Like, it was millennials all day, every day. Gen Z is a bunch of dumb bitches,
Right.
who are too busy on
the
fucking
super young
TikTok.
never vote.
Millennial.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It was mostly millennials who were worried about that crap. So, and I love how as soon as reports came out that Gen Z and millennials voted in force, Republicans got super salty and immediately started trying to do what they usually do, is try to prevent them from voting. So,
oh yeah, let's raise the voting age and things like that. It's not
honestly,
surprising.
the biggest loss for me was that Boebert might survive this. I fucking hate Boebert. I really.
It would be something if, like, it's almost like too good of a tale. Like, it's too good of a tale that the deciding vote for the House, because it's going to come down to 1 or 2 seats. But it's too good of a story that that Boebert would be the seat that decides it all. But it seems like Boebert's going to survive.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, she's up half a point. Yeah, they say that, like, rich Aspenites, like, might be heavily in the absentee ballots, but I don't know if it's going to be 1,000 votes. But
yeah, I don't know about that.
But it kind of so the big difference between, like, for if you're outside of America, like, inside of America, we kind of know that, like, had it been a big red wave, the Republican Party would have spent the next 2 years just impeaching Biden for fucking everything, like having his shoelace untied. They're like, impeach Biden. But now that it's like a sliver, like, if the Republicans have it, it's going to be a sliver, 1 or 2 votes. They're not going to have enough to impeach, because there's going to be at least 5 Republicans that are going to be like, no, let's not go down this path. More than 5, I don't know, but, like, there'll be like 5, at least 5 that don't want to go down the path. And so it does completely change how business is going to be done. Like when you don't have a huge majority.
Well, one of the Republicans who voted to impeach Trump, he survived and he got reelected. Only one
Mm,
though. I feel like the other ones that voted to impeach him, they figured they wouldn't have been reelected, so they dropped out.
yeah.
I honestly wish they kind of stayed, but no, red wave, more like a red trickle. Anything to see Charlie. Was it Charlie Kirk? Who's the Nazi that Vosh always rambles against?
Charlie
Is it Charlie
Kirk, yeah.
Kirk?
Yeah, yeah. The
Right.
guy with the weird
Anything to
face.
see him
He's
like
got a
flip
big
out.
head and a small face. It's really weird. Oh yeah,
Apparently,
yeah,
he's like
yeah.
as tall as you.
Oh my
He's
god,
as
like
tall as you. So
oh well, um he's got this really
uh,
weird face. Uh
I love how all the fucking conservatives are just flipping out, even though they kind of won. Kinda. It was such a small, insignificant win for them that they were expecting so much and they got nothing. Oh, by the way, real quick, you mentioned Trump earlier and his son with succession.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but Trump was hesitant to name Don Jr. to give Don Jr. the name Donald because he was worried that what if Don grows up to be a loser? He doesn't want the Donald name. He doesn't want the Donald Trump name to be associated with being a loser.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's pretty Trumpy, right? That's yeah. Right. I mean, no, you can pull out more and more of these stories, and they just that sounds like him, but it's not going to affect anybody's opinions. The only thing that affects
Honestly,
people's opinions is whether Trump wins. If Trump isn't a winner, people are going to drop him. But
that's the thing. I
it's
kind of
not.
don't
It's
want him to be arrested now. I kind of want him to run again because if he does, then it's just gonna invigorate the blue voters more to come out against him again to beat
it.
that beast. It's the second Death Star.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. It doesn't surprise me though that the millennials came out and voted because like they're so what millennials are defined as being born between the 80s and the 90s.
No,
So
I think that's mid '80s and like it's kind of late '90s.
yeah, squishy
I think.
concept, right? Like when I was young, like I'm like today I'm solidly Gen X, but when I was younger, people were like, oh, I don't know. The Gen X is kind of referred to people a little bit older than me, but now I'm completely Gen X, like in how people talk about the generations. But like, they'd invented this other one like Gen Y at the time, and now it's
I remember
Gen.
that.
Yeah. But nonetheless, if you're born in whatever the mid '80s to the mid '90s, that means you're going to be in your mid 20s to your mid 30s, right? Am I doing my math correct? Yeah. So, what people are interested in, you know, um, reproductive rights, well, you've got to be in like birthing age, right? Well, so, like, I could imagine like people in their 40s and 50s and 60s. Well, they're way past that. So, like, why they even? Why? I'm not worried about like getting pregnant, so it's not an issue. But if you're the type of person that like does have to worry about birth control and things like that, and your reproductive freedoms, like of course you're going to come out and vote. So of course like millennials like went out and voted. Like it's who would it's just like old people go out and vote for social security. Like it's completely understandable.
I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you, but old people don't go out and vote on Social Security anymore. Old people go out and vote about what someone across the country wants to gender themselves as. That's the new thing now. That's the new thing.
I don't know, I'll tell you this: if somebody like legitimately like, I mean, if they really like got him on wanting to cut social security, old people would come out in force. Like I understand that like Ron Johnson gets like they like try to pin that on him, but you gotta have the voters like really like realistically like faced with that, they would annihilate like anyone that tries to like cut social security. But it's a big single issue voter thing. Like they don't care about anything else. um Does the Frey breeding program make Walder dangerous because he's immune to warding? Why didn't Hoster replace him after he was late to the Trident? I think with Walder, like him being late to the Trident was believable. Like it was, as much as people like scoff about being late, it's hard to prove, right? Like, Plus, like Walder is like really a powerful lord. Like, do you really want to in post-war Westeros like take on the second most powerful house in the Riverlands when you've just like barely won this war? Now is Walder immune to warding because is the idea that he's got so many children that when the wards it doesn't really mean much because they can be executed and he would have many more. But what's interesting is that he is the one that actually pushed the warding. Like, I think no one was sitting there and like, well, we're going to take a Frey child as a ward. He wanted to push the warding because he saw the benefits of people growing up together and becoming friends in a Robert Ned fashion. And so he pushed the wards, hoping that Big Walder and Little Walder would become close with the Starks over time. So I think you're right that he is dangerous in the sense that people wouldn't take on a Frey ward because he's got so many heirs and it doesn't mean very much. But he likes to push his wards, you know. Time traveling Bran knot greater than the Myronese knot. Oh yeah. There's no. I don't think there's any way to solve the time. I don't think George's brain is going to be able to solve the time traveling Bran knot. It's just too complicated. Too complicated. But I do think that's going to be a big problem for George. I think if the Winds of Winter never comes, I think it's time traveling Bran knot. I think you're right on. I think his only way of getting winds out is if he pushes that knot to a Dream of Spring and just doesn't want it in there. I don't think he'll be able to solve it. It's too complicated, and his mind is he's too old at this point. It's mind bending to think about like the time traveling Bran plot. Damn, kind of makes me wish SCOTUS had time to overrule Griswold and Miranda. Now they're gonna course correct, I bet. Fingers crossed. I think they might be stupid enough. The only one in there that is really concerned with how the Republicans do is John Roberts. Like, he wanted to get rid of Roe v. Wade by chipping away at it over the years, over generations. And the rest of them were just dumb and thought that like America would take it. And now, they probably will like slow down, and maybe they're going to slow down and be like, oh crap. Like we drew too much attention to ourselves. But I think it's too late. It's too late. Like, now that Roe v. Wade is going to be the voting issue forever until a national, like, unless like Congress passes like a national like abortion law, it's going to be a voting issue forever. In Kentucky, it won. In Kansas, it won. Like, it's incredibly popular. Like, it's incredibly popular.
Which one is this? This is
just abortion being legal. I mean, there's slightly different things. Like, Kentucky wanted to add a amendment to their constitution, like banning abortion, and people rejected it. While I think California and Michigan enshrined it in their constitutions, and Kansas already had it in their constitution and voted to keep it. I'm surprised it didn't affect Texas very much, but they're nuts.
What's Griswold Miranda? What's that one again?
There's a right to privacy in general is like more about when we talk about like going. So Roe v. Wade is based on this idea of a right to privacy, and that's an interpretation of the 14th Amendment that due process involves this kind of situation. And let's see. I think it's actually Griswold versus Connecticut is actually the court case. Court, so Griswold versus Connecticut, landmark decision that Griswold is about contraceptives. So this was that it ruled married couples could buy and use contraceptives without government restriction, and this kind of like just in general legalized um, like the privacy of birth control options, and it was just like another step.
Um, what did Clarence Thomas say? He wants to go after gay marriage next and other stuff as well.
Right
Revisit them.
now, Miranda versus Arizona, I think, is the other one he's talking about, which most people know about Miranda versus Arizona being like the your Miranda rights are read. Um,
Hmm.
but this has in general about incrimination and stuff like that. But um,
I want them to go after this is gonna sound very fucked up, but listen to me on this. I want them to go after the gay marriage thing next. I want them to try to fuck with that, and I also kind of want the Republicans to pull one over on Clarence and go after interracial marriage. I'll tell you why.
Loving versus
Because
Virginia,
Luthen,
yeah.
right, Luthen in Andor has it correct. The only way to overthrow these assholes is to really piss everyone off to the point where everyone comes out.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, Andor did kind of have it right. Like the Empire screws up all at once, they like overreach, right? If had they done the whole like frog and boiling water thing, like people kind of take it. But when you do it all at once, it's like too much. Is it me, or did the people in the last 10 years who said the U.S. is not a democracy but a constitutional republic end up being crypto fascists? So the for international people, I don't know because it's very very late for Europeans. But there's this constant thing about how like you'll run into these rednecks who will be like who love to tell you, well, the reason that this and this isn't the case is that we're not a democracy, we're a republic. And you're like, yeah, go fuck yourself, okay? Like, there's no like, everyone knows this. Like, you can't have a true democracy where every single person is going out and voting on every single issue. That's like too much. So like, everyone has to have representative democracy. But like, in representative democracy, there's still this like general notion that the majority's opinion tends to win out with with some protections for like minority rights and things like that. So like, using this like statement that like we're a republic, not a democracy, is just it's really silly. Like, one, everyone knows that, like, but two, like, you're not adding to a conversation, but two, it's kind of just saying like tough, like human, like democratic will, like majority rule, like doesn't matter. It's a little silly, uh especially depending on the issue. Like, you can push a minority rights kind of issue on stuff, saying like, well, if a majority of people in America are Christians, we should be a Christian nation. Well, no, but like, there's still minority rights, but there's this weird, it tends to be these people that like study Civil War history and know every Civil War battle, and then they love to like tell people that U.S. is not a democracy but a constitutional republic. But yeah, but they're definitely fascists. I mean, like, when you really get down to it, they don't they they're I think what Nick Fuentes has like going nuts right now, like saying that we need to like force people to believe what we believe and stuff like that. It's
What does he believe? Like, this is something I never understand about the what is the right wing agenda? Like,
they don't really
besides
have any beliefs
Christian
right now.
nationalism,
That's the big thing
right?
that,
Like, what's the thing?
like, that's the big thing right now, is the Republicans don't really stand for anything, right? Besides like being a Christian party, or like the anti-trans party, or the low taxes on the rich party. Like, what do they really stand for? you know. Um, the I mean, it's easier to win when you're like just the anti-democratic part, like you're anti-democrats, I guess. But um, oh, I predict a three-way split in 2024. Trump will be the third party, and it seems that the GOP establishment wants DeSantis, Biden, Trump, DeSantis. Yeah, this is a fantasy. You wish, but but yeah, that would be great. I would love that, but I don't think it'll happen. I think Trump will eventually realize that he doesn't have the support. Um, Preston, do you support full term abortions? Yes. Um, but I mean, this is another like talking point that the anti-abortionists will like try to pull is that what they'll try to get is like they'll try to get you on like some little thing like, oh, but what about the late term? You have to admit that that's a baby. I'm like, no, I don't. Like that's it. The people that get abortions in late term, it tends to be severe health problems or severe birth defects. It's incredibly few. Like so, the fact that like anti-abortionists like to shift the conversation to that um, is disingenuous. Like, why are we taught? Why, like, the conversation in the country right now is banning abortion, period. Like at 6 weeks and under, and things like that. And they would like to shift the conversation to like as if somebody's going in with an 8.5 months pregnant, and being like, stab it up. Like that's just not happening. It's just not happening. But I do support abortions all the way up until birth because those are the ones that are health of the mother. And I don't think it's a life until it's born. So like I understand the trick. Like it's a trick trying to shift the conversation there, but it's not. Like it's just one. The policy conversation is not there. So why are we even having this discussion? Because Roe v. Wade only goes up to viability. It doesn't even like we're not even having that conversation. So you're bringing up something irrelevant. But two, like you're not going to trick me. Like those are health of the mother situations, and I don't believe it. I just don't believe that like something's alive until it's born. So abortions, I'm fully for abortions, all circumstances, all situations. But have you noticed the parallels between Bloodraven and Odin hanging from a tree, ravens, and losing an eye without gaining a third one? Yeah, so a lot of people bring these things up. The about the Norse mythology kind of stuff, and yeah, there tends to be this idea that like, coming from Norse mythology that when you lose one eye, you gain wisdom and stuff like that, and so that's always kind of there, and I think that's intentional. That we think of the one-eyed person being, and not just ice and fire. Like we see this in a lot of stuff, but the one-eyed person is the wise one or whatever. But so I think that's definitely there. The hanging from a tree aspect, I have to look into it a little more on the ravens and stuff like that. But certainly the wisdom and kind of stuff is that parallel is certainly there. Should be that women get to vote on abortions. It's true. It's true. Now I need to log off pretty soon because I've been on here 3 hours and I need to take care of my kid right now. But the thank you all for being with me. Any last things, Carmine? Carmine gone to sleep.
No. I'm waiting to hear back. No, I'm right here. You're cutting out, by the way.
Okay, good. Fine that it's
You're
happening at the end.
having technical difficulties with your connection.
But anyway, thank you.
No, I'm waiting to hear back from my my contact. and we will. So I can upload those podcasts we did. I have another idea if you want to do one about like the best episodes of House of the
Okay.
Dragon,
My
in
the
case you want to do it.
I was talking to Carmine this week. I was like, let's do a discussion of like our top 10, like bottom 10, like Dance of Dragons chapters. And he's like, oh, okay. I'm trying to rope him in, but I think it'll be a fun discussion.
I'm down.
All right. But thank you all for sticking with me. I'll see you guys next time. Later.